Look at this map I found.
Now, we've all heard of the legend of Atlantis.
It is a map that shows the mythical land of Atlantis.
Whether Atlanteans or giants.
And it matches all the characteristics of Atlantis.
Atlantis is waiting.
I can't believe it.
And this map asserts that it's maybe not so mythical. It shows exactly where it is. I mean, everything else about this map, if you just look at like the lines of the current day world, is accurate. It's a well-made map. It was made at the end of the 1800s. And yet it shows Atlantis and a bunch of other crazy stuff, saying that it existed about 1 million years ago. I bought the originals, and if I look giddy, it's because I am. I love old original maps. And it's not just one map, it's 4 of them. These maps claim to explain some of the greatest mysteries of human civilization. How ancient civilizations, despite not being able to communicate with each other, invented similar looking structures an ocean away. It's a story about the birth of civilization, the spread of technology. I want to tell you the story of these maps that assert that Atlantis is real and that we can learn something from it. I also think we can learn something from these maps. These are effectively treasure maps, purporting to show you the location of Atlantis. They're part of this book that argues that Atlantis is real, a detailed history and explanation. So let me tell you the story of these maps, which is the story of Atlantis.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
I ain't gonna hold y'all, chat. Do y'all actually think Atlantis is real? Like, actually, do you guys think it's real? Like, no shame if you guys do. I'm just curious. Like, do you guys think Atlantis is real, though?
So it all starts with Plato. Plato was one guy living in Athens 2,400 years ago. He had some really good ideas about justice, education, government, science, and a bunch of other things that influenced how our Western society developed. Pretty influential, incredible guy. And here he is in one of his texts describing a land called Atlantis. He said it was a utopia that was located, quote, past the Pillars of Hercules, so somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. According to Plato, the city was built as a series of circles with a complex system of canals and walls made out of exotic metals. It was full of advanced technology and engineering. There was a massive palace. The city was decorated with golden statues. Plato says that Atlantis had an advanced military and navy which ruled over this huge island civilization. Okay, before we go on here, let me make one thing crystal clear, which is that most historians agree that Plato wasn't describing a literal place. In his mind, Atlantis was a parable. It was a lesson that he was using to talk about utopian societies and the hubris of man and the downfall of humans and all of these things, and that it wasn't actually real. But the idea of this advanced civilization in the middle of the Atlantic did not go away. It stuck around for centuries, especially when Europeans started exploring the world. It's like the 1500s, Europeans are out discovering new lands, and a lot of these explorers were secretly hoping that they would stumble upon some advanced lost civilization, like Plato's Atlantis.
I have a question, chat. Like, let's say like a UFO like came down and offered a space adventure. Like, they'll say like when the aliens said, you know, we'll take you to space, we'll show you around the galaxy, we'll teach you how this stuff was formed, all of this type of stuff, and show you guys, show you how they live. Like, would y'all like go on the UFO and like go off to space for about a year? I would do it. I would do it. I would go see alien civilizations. Yeah, I would. I would. Yeah, that stuff sounds fun. I'll go to space for man. Yeah, I'll go to space for about a year. Yeah, maybe longer, depending on how they live, if it's good or not. You know, I'll go to the planet, go see the city, you know.
Or maybe they would find all these precious resources and advanced technology. But the idea of Atlantis didn't really take off in any sort of serious way until a couple centuries later, with the arrival of science. Science was not invented by Europeans in like the 1700s, but Europe was going through a scientific revolution where more and more people were tinkering with instruments and methodologies that were teaching them about reality. They were displacing the old explanation that God was responsible for all of reality, and they were gathering empirical evidence that explained the world in new ways.
God is responsible for
As a part of all
our
of this
reality.
science, European explorers were stumbling upon lost cities they thought were just myths. If these thought to be mythical cities ended up being real and scientists were finding them, what else was out there? Maybe Plato's Atlantis? So yeah, it's the 1800s, science is having a big moment, and Atlantis is trending once again.
There was no concept in the mid-1800s that civilization had been around for thousands and thousands of years. You know, most people were still kind of using the Bible as the main source of information about the human past, so people thought that the Earth was relatively young.
People were approaching the idea of Atlantis with a much more...
I heard about Lemuria too. Like, do y'all actually think that was real? Lemuria? Let's see, we have Lemuria, Atlantis. I ain't gonna lie, chat, people actually think there's an ice wall, which is very silly. Very, 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 very silly. An ice wall? Are we serious? Hey, little man, you know I can go on YouTube and search up live satellite feed right now, and it's gonna pop up. Like, are you serious? This guy, so, yeah.
Scientific lens. There was a bunch of scientific theories on offer at the time. For example, we were learning just how much the continents we stand on aren't fixed. They're actually all floating around, bumping into each other. And this helped explain why scientists were finding fossils that matched up with each other even though they were an ocean apart. They were seeing this same sort of thing with cultures as well. The Egyptians and the Mayans both had created pyramids, but there's no way they could talk to each other. Their arches, their writing systems, their agricultural practices, all very similar. How could you explain this? And this is where this idea caught hold. What if there was one civilization where all of this knowledge had stemmed from? One that was perhaps right in between the new and old.
I think if Atlantis was real, I think it would either be in the Bahamas, around here, or maybe in the Pacific. I don't know about... Well, hold on. It is Atlantis, though. So we do got to put it over here. I think it was either here, or here, right here. I don't know. But it would make sense if it was right off the coast. But I don't know if it has, like... Has anybody found anything, though, regarding to Atlantis?
World. What if it was Plato's Atlantis?
I got another sales call now, and I can't even remember the customer's name. His name is Kevin, and my name is your name.
People in Europe and America really started to think about Atlantis through the lens of science. They started producing books and lectures and studies and graphs and maps. And this gets us to the maps that I've been obsessed about. The maps that I pulled the trigger on and just bought the originals because I couldn't help myself. Can we just get a short montage that shows how beautiful these maps are, please? Thank you. Okay, so here's where the story gets a little bit wild. I'm going to show you finally what these maps show. But this is also where things get a little bit dark. These maps were created by a Scottish banker turned amateur cartographer and anthropologist at the very end of the 1800s and into the early 1900s. You have to understand something about that time. Yes, a scientific revolution was taking place. Yes, science was trending and we were revolutionizing everything about how we saw the world. And yet at the same time, there was another revolution, which was a spiritual revolution. People were throwing off the old ways of thinking about God, but were still...
I think that... Hold on. Was that the scientific revolution? Hold on, Chad, am I right? Hold on, Chad, do I know my history? Hold on, wait. What year was this too?
And yet at the same time, there was another... everything taking place. You have to understand at the very end of the 1800s and into the early 1900s. You have to understand something about Scottish banker turned amateur cartographer and anthropologist at the very end of the 1800s and into the early 1900s. You have to understand something about that time. Yes, a scientific revolution was taking place. Yes, science was trending and we were revolutionizing everything.
Yeah, Chad, I know my history. Let's go.
And yet at the same
scientific
time,
revolution.
there was another revolution, which was a spiritual revolution. People were throwing off the old ways of
wait, hold on. I got confused. Because I missed it during the time period. Yes.
About God, but we're still in this kind of awkward.
in the awkward middle. Yeah, so they were still thinking about God, but shifting towards more science. So I started thinking about the scientific revolution. Hold on, Chad. Hold on. Hey, time out.
Awkward middle ground where they wanted to embrace science, but they also had some like leftover thinking from like the religious days, making claims about reality but using kind of superficial empirical evidence, and then filling in the blanks, connecting the dots with more evidence that they had gathered by being in touch with spirits or psychic powers. These clairvoyant powers boosted their ability to do science, which, wasn't really science.
We're talking about the late 19th century, and so we don't know that much. We don't have some of the same skills and the same tool set that we have today in archaeology.
And this makes Atlantis the perfect target for this sort of thinking. And it's that kind of thinking that produced these maps. So let me decode them for you. Okay, real quick, I'm going to pause the story because I need to thank today's sponsor. Thank you, Incogni, for sponsoring today's video. Longtime sponsor, but anymore.
Better sponsor me. Go lock in.
Requesting that it be taken. Scrubbing. This at its prime. So you can see that you have a map of the modern day world. That's all this black back here. Okay, that's like the map today. But then the red shading over it is what the author, William Scott Elliott, says the world looked like all these years ago. So it looked kind of like this.
Let's see, we got Atlantis. I don't know what this is. This looks like a mix of Europe and Asia. Very interesting. Where's all the other continents at? Like South America, America, I don't know. Like, is this I don't know, man.
The bluish green is another set of land that the author said existed a long time ago, but I'm going to focus on the red here because that's where we get...
Wait, hold on. For y'all who don't know, this kind of looks like Doggerland. Do y'all know what Doggerland is? Is it like... Let's see, we got Atlantis, Lemuria, and Doggerland. What is Doggerland? See, let's see if it's real. Doggerland was a submerged landmass that once connected Great Britain to the mainland of Europe, now lying beneath the North Sea. This region exposed during the... Yeah, you're not finna clip me. 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 Who utilize its rich natural resources for hunting and foraging. Approximately 8,000 years ago, rising sea levels inundated Doggerland, transforming the landmass and creating the geography we recognize today. So yes, this is Doggerland, connected modern day Europe, which would be Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, I believe, to United Kingdom. Yeah. A lot of mysterious things about Doggerland. Oh, no, not Germany. I don't know. I think around this area, though. It was around here. So it might have been Belgium, Amsterdam, maybe Germany. It might have been a tiny piece of land. I don't know. In that area. I don't know the full landmass extent. Because I thought, like, all of this, like, landmass was all connected. Which I think it did say. Doggerland was a submerged landmass that once connected Great Britain to the mainland of Europe. Yeah, so wouldn't it be around all this, like this whole area right here? I don't know. That's what I said. I was a little confused. So yeah, that's what I said. I was just a little confused. No, I'm not. So
Atlantis. The reason there's 4 maps is because this author wanted to represent what the world looked like over time as the ocean rose and fell, which, remember, that's a real thing that happens in real life. Tectonic plates move around and the ocean rises and falls. Like the entire west coast of the United States used to be underwater. That's like an undisputed.
Vegas had a beach? Yo! Chat, bro, Vegas had a beach. I don't know what that would look like. That would be some crazy stuff. Worse than Venice, definitely. But, hey, man.
Fact.
No, Vegas was underneath water.
William Scott Elliott is pulling from that real scientific theory.
Which makes sense because I remember being in Cub Scouts and we were at the Lake Mead area and we were finding seashells. And the part we were finding seashells at was way, 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 way far from the water. And they said this whole part, like Vegas used to be underwater like thousands of years ago or something like that. It would make sense. It would make sense. It would make sense. For y'all who don't know, I think there used to be a massive lake in California that connects to the ocean in northern. And I don't know, but one of the mountains they said they found like shark bones or something or dinosaur bones. But it was very interesting.
To create his own theory of Atlantis. So if you look right here, this is what William Scott Elliott says is the continent of Atlantis. It's labeled right there, Atlantis. The main population center is right here, the city of the Golden Gates. Oh, but it's not just maps. There's a whole book. Boy, this book is wild. In this book, William Scott Elliott describes in detail
where's
the
Atlantis
city of
now?
Atlantis. It follows a lot of what Plato described in terms of a circular city that was full of sophisticated canals and palaces and stuff. But boy, William Scott Elliott takes it to an entirely new level. I mean, let me show you. Welcome to William Scott Elliott's Atlantis. An ancient civilization that reached its...
So chat, you're telling me if some beings pulled up in a spaceship like this or some type, aircraft like this, came up to you, dropped down right at your feet and said, hey, I could take you to my world. You could stay here if you want. We could show you around. You wouldn't get in. I'm getting in. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm getting in. I want to go see what the alien worlds look like, bro. There's nothing wrong with that. Y'all should do the same. Y'all actually think the aliens gonna eat you? If that was the case, they would have been took you. It would have been a whole buffet on Earth.
Prime a million years ago.
GTRP.
Most of the details of this version of Atlantis were revealed not through real scientific inquiry, but through William Scott Elliott's brain, through spiritual clairvoyance, which he blended with a few scientific factoids at the time to build out this story. Atlantis is a circular city with this massive palace at the center. The engineering is highly sophisticated, with a complicated canal system that manages the city water. And look, there's an underwater reservoir in the shape of a heart from which the city gets its drinking water. At its height, he says, 2 million people lived here, and they were of a unique Atlantean race with unique powers and characteristics.
Wait, so there were different races of Atlanteans? You're saying?
They wielded advanced tech, like these flying battleships, that used a type of energy from a different plane, not measurable by our understanding of physics. An etheric plane, whatever that means. This understanding of different energy planes allowed the Atlantean...
I ain't gonna lie though, something weird about UFOs is that everyone has the same report that they go from sky onto the ground, back into the water very fast, and they can go any direction in any way, shape, or form. That's very weird. And this is stuff like this too has been seen for a long, 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 long time now. So this is very interesting. Like very interesting. Like it will go. I think they say it will go from the ground to the sky to the water. It'll be very weird. I don't know.
Race to wield nature in powerful ways, creating a kind of powerful sorcery that could be used for both good and evil. They wrote on sheets of metal, they drank blood hot from the animal, they had explosives that released poisonous gas, and the women were treated equally.
GTRP.
Wow. Okay, before we get too drunk on all these juicy, tantalizing sci-fi details, let's just check in on what's going on here. Is this guy writing a piece of fiction, or is he trying to do science? Yes, he produced a set of painstakingly detailed maps that look like real maps. Like there is the world. I see the world in the shape of the world. And yet, he's describing a civilization with supernatural powers. All of this happening a million years ago, which is about 990,000 years before scientists say that humans started farming, domesticating animals, and developing for science happening a million years ago, which is about 990,000 years before scientists say that humans started farming, domesticating animals, and developing what would become civilization.
So 10,000 years ago, so 1 million years ago, subtract 999, 990, So about 10,000 years ago, that's crazy. They say we just started. Now, hold on now, because if you're just starting, like, how did our great 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 ancestors survive too? They must have cities and towns and stuff like that. I don't think they just went out and all hunted meat every single day like that. I think they had fruits and veggies that they found a way to sophisticatedly, farm or something like that. That just hasn't been discovered. I don't know. I just don't think because if you have a town, you need to have some way to get crops or something, or you're gonna die. You can't just eat animals because you go in the winter, the animals are on hibernation, and you gotta be in caves and stuff. Like it's a grilling process. I don't know.
Okay, but don't worry. William Scott Elliott has an explanation for this. Catastrophes. He says that there was a global catastrophe 800,000 years ago. It was an ice age that ripped through the Earth and reshaped the entire planet, which is how you get from this to map number 2. So here's the world starting 800,000 years ago after the big ice age. Atlantis is still here, but it's starting to kind of sink into the sea. Fast forward, that gets us to map number 3 and map number 4, according to William Scott Elliott. It's these catastrophes that sunk Atlantis into the ocean, till it became this smaller island, which is what he says Plato was referring to when he was talking about this utopian society. And then, finally, the ocean rose, and Atlantis sunk completely in the year 9564 BC. Pretty specific there, William, which is the time that he says there was a massive flood that covered the whole planet. He says it's the same flood that happened in the Bible. Noah's Ark, remember? And that the flood sunk Atlantis once and for all into the ocean. Goodbye, Atlantis. Great civilization is now gone. But before it sunk, people from Atlantis had fled east and west across the world, bringing with them their knowledge about advanced technology, engineering, architecture. And this is his explanation for why the Egyptians and the Mayans had pyramids. Oh, and he also says that the descendants of these Atlanteans...
But here's the thing about the pyramids, though. The pyramids, they got the stones and rocks from a quarry that's about 500 miles away. And if we're talking about the Egypt now, when it's just covered in sand and sand dunes, I don't see you dragging 2-ton stones through the sand. Like, was it a lush rainforest? You could see that, but even still, like, you could build a pyramid like that, which they would struggle now to do, which has been factually told. They would struggle building the pyramids now in a perfect geometry order with ton weighing stones. Like, these are not little tiny bricks. Like, these are tons. And a perfect order, cut them the exact precise way. That is actually insane. That is insane. Whoever thought of that was an actual genius to do. To make sure it was perfect. And you just don't do that overnight. I hope you guys know that. Like, there has to be some type of foundation. Pyramids are really complex to build. That's what I'm so confused over. Because it's like, how did you get to the point where you're able to build pyramids on that level, you know? But yet people still think that you're frail and all you do is eat bread all day with sandals and you have disease and you're not strong. And it's like, how are you getting that then? I don't know. I don't know. That's a really, I don't know how they built the pyramids. And here's the thing, there's no there was I think only one sarcophagus or tomb found in the pyramids. So you can't say it's housing for the dead because there's not really any dead people or dead Egyptian leaders, pharaohs like that in the pyramids. So how would you, what was that for and why? That's really interesting. Same thing for Stonehenge and Easter Island. Easter Island is really weird because I really want to know how they did that. And you can't just put a big old rock with a stone face on top. Because it's gonna, again, how did you do that? Same thing with Stonehenge.
Atlanteans would go on to be the Aryan race, which would be the most advanced civilization. Yeah, we'll get back to that in just a sec because it gets pretty messed up. Anyway, so you get the story. There's so much more to this that I'll leave all my reading in the source document so you can see it, because it gets nuts and there's so much more kind of racializing of this story. But what this is a pseudoscientific attempt to tell a story that was based off of spiritual revelations, meaning not science, but it is clothed in sciencey looking things. That's what this is. Let's just be very clear. I'm not saying it's anything other than that. And at the time, that was kind of accepted by some circles. My big question here is why? Why would this guy do this? Like, did he make a bunch of money off of like duping people into the legend of Atlantis? I don't think so. Why would he make all of this up? We'll never know exactly why, but my theory is that he really believed this stuff. I think, like a lot of us, William Scott Elliot had constructed a worldview that helped explain the mysteries he didn't understand. And he used a variety of rational and spiritual means to construct a story that helped him make sense of the world. We all kind of do this. This guy just happened to do it in a map that 120 years later we can all look at and like gawk at, even though it's a really beautiful map, and I'm totally gonna hang this on my wall. This was his explanation. Someone trying to explain how the native people in a new world, who Europeans saw as primitive and inferior, had somehow built such sophisticated structures.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, these structures are so sophisticated. It's just crazy. It's like, how do you build that? You're not dragging 2-ton stones through the sand. That like, it's just like, and then you understand, I think, what we see now as the pyramids, I think was something better. Like, I don't know. Like, the Egyptians, man, they were really sophisticated. And what they don't tell you is, like, they were actually really sophisticated. I always wonder, like, I really do wonder about the pyramids. Pyramids are actually, like, they're crazy. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Story.
Very wild theories about the pyramids, though. I will give you that. There's some crazy theories about
Helped explain that.
So the world those guys are talking about is a world in which mainly dark-skinned people are kind of backward and kind of primitive, and a cadre of white folks who are members of this advanced civilization travel around the world and give them culture.
And yes, it resulted in this implication that there was one superior Aryan race, an idea that unfortunately endured into the 1930s, when one man became obsessed with trying to use science in ideological Germany. It was the same thing that William Scott Elliot was doing, building a bogus story using an old parable, but in this case to justify some of the most heinous acts of violence in our history. So, the big question that I should just answer very clearly, is there any evidence that Atlantis existed? Well, it depends what you mean by evidence. If you're someone who looks at the many mysteries in our world and is comfortable filling in the blanks with your own guesses, especially the ones that feel good, then yes, there's a million different things that you could look at, connect the dots on, that would make you believe that Atlantis is real. But if you're somebody who believes in the long, slow process of scientific knowledge, where many different scientists gather, analyze, and debate evidence over decades until they establish a consensus of what is true, if that's your definition of compelling evidence, then no. Atlantis, which was constructed by Plato as a parable to teach people, has no basis in empirical fact. It just simply does not. And yet my big lesson out of all of this is that even after centuries of like good science and archaeological methodologies that tell us what's real and are still trying to discover the other mysteries, we still are so like intoxicated.
Would y'all go scuba diving at the lowest point that you can go to in the ocean for, like, let's say a band or $100,000? Me personally, I'm doing it. If I eat a good meal, okay. I don't know if you're supposed to do that. So I'm just. If I eat a good meal, a bottle of orange juice, all right, an instructor, a learnings guide on how to do scuba diving, I would do it. Yeah. $100,000 too? The lowest point? You know how much sea creatures I could see doing that? I would stream the whole thing too, y'all. You get the GoPro? Boom. Comb my head. Boom. You going scuba diving?
By this story for the same reason these guys were. It's a really tempting idea. It's kind of a comforting idea.
I think a lot of people want there to be something wonderful and fascinating and lost out there that they don't know about. As an archaeologist, I often try to communicate to them that the human past is interesting enough without making a bunch of stuff up.
But to me, this is just a good story clothed in scientific language and images, which is perhaps the most dangerous of them all because it looks real. It co-opts the language of science to tell lies, and it continues to live on in the form of History Channel documentaries, a recent Netflix documentary that indulge these same ideas because
this game, you're not ready for it.
people like to believe. So to me, not only is this map beautiful, but it also serves as a cautionary tale. I want to hang this on my wall to remind me that even if it looks science-y and has a lot of big scientific words, that doesn't make it proof, that doesn't make it true. We've been scanning these maps, and we've created a poster that you can buy. We will create 500 of them. There are 4 original maps I bought for this story. I'm keeping one of them, but 3 of them are up for grabs. The original map that was printed at the time. Nick, who has been doing all of this scanning, has some thoughts on why one would want to purchase a map like this for their home. Nick?
Own a piece of Western esoteric history, an original 1900 William Scott Elliott Atlantis map. It really represents the late 1800s and early 1900s fascination and obsession with mysticism and the esoteric in general. So people became totally obsessed with things like Atlantis and seances and stuff. So it's a cool thing to be able to own a piece of mystical history and where science and mysticism really intersected.
Maps are for sale. Go get them now in the description. Thank you all for being here, for being on this journey as we continue to learn about the history of evidence and science and how we know what we know. It's an ongoing discussion and debate, and boy, it's an important one to have these days. So thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.
Dang. Every level of wealth in 13 minutes. There's some good, really good. Oh shoot. There's some good reacts in here, y'all. I'm gonna go use the bathroom real quick, so I will be back. Oh, yo, what's up, Custom Savage? How you doing, man? Custom Savage, yeah. What's up, man? How you doing, bro? You good, bro? Good.